Do you know the story of the doctor who saved more than 75 lives during the Second World War without touching a weapon? He was just another normal boy born in the United States. Since his childhood, he strictly followed his religion, being an Adventist. Because of that, this little boy was always against violence and based his life on biblical testaments. But he had one that was his favorite: "Thou shalt not kill." Furthermore, he also faithfully believed that Saturday was an extremely sacred day and that it should be a day of rest for everyone. But this boy, called Desmond Doss, little did he imagine that something would completely change his life. In December 1941, in a surprise attack, the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, a United States military base in the Pacific. Shortly after the attack, the American President Franklin Delano Roosevelt declared war on Japan. Desmond, who was just living a normal life, was intrigued by the war because despite being a pacifist and against violence, Desmond wanted to serve his country. After nights of indecision, he made his choice and enlisted in the American Army. But from that moment on, many problems began to arise. As soon as he arrived at the base, he started having problems. Many soldiers from Doss's battalion didn't like him and made fun of his religious thoughts because he read the Bible daily and continually asked his superiors for him to have Saturdays off instead of Sundays, which was the standard for other soldiers. And after much insistence, the superiors decided that Adventist soldiers would have the Sabbath off. In addition to that, he constantly did not eat some food offered to the soldiers, and this made his Doss colleagues hate him even more, thinking that he had many privileges and did not suffer like them. One of them even told Desmond that one day when they went to the battlefield, he would not return alive and that if necessary, his own colleague would make sure of that. After a while, Doss became a military doctor and always said that, when others took lives, I would save them. But it wasn't long before he was able to prove his worth to his battalion colleagues. It was common for training to take place where everyone had to run long distances, and many soldiers injured their feet during the journey. Right after Doss and his colleagues completed this entire journey, he insisted on looking at and taking care of the feet of all the soldiers who had injured themselves, earning a certain respect from his colleagues that day. A few weeks later, Doss and other soldiers went to the battlefield to help a division of the American Army in the Pacific, and in the Battle of Guam, they truly knew what war is. The Americans were advancing into the jungle on the first day of the battle when a soldier saw a pin on the ground. Before anyone could warn him, a grenade exploded, destroying part of his hand and hurting the soldier's chest. Doss ran to help the soldier injured and managed to stabilize him and administer first aid, helping to evacuate him and 3 other soldiers who were injured. Doss constantly lost his colleagues and friends during battles, and in addition, he was also very hungry, because the food given to soldiers went against his religious thoughts of following a vegetarian diet, having to eat only biscuits and coconuts that he found on beaches. The most shocking thing was that the soldier from Doss's division, who had said he was going to kill him, came to ask Doss for help and asked him to pray for his life. But Doss did not expect that his destiny still awaited him. In the Battle of Okinawa, the Americans had to conquer an island that would serve as a base to be able to make future attacks against the Japanese mainland. This battle was the bloodiest of the Pacific War because the Japanese were entrenched and the Americans had to climb a high cliff to advance on the island. When the attack began, the Americans suffered heavy casualties, and many were injured because they had to advance through no man's land under heavy Japanese fire. Even with his left leg injured, Doss began his mission to save his colleagues. After a grenade exploded in the hand of a sergeant who was 25 meters away from Doss, he ran there under Japanese fire and helped evacuate the sergeant and 4 others who were injured. Shortly afterwards, several waves of Japanese soldiers began to attack the Americans, causing panic and forcing them all to retreat to the beach. Despite everything, Doss did not abandon his colleagues and, even under heavy fire, continued to go to Japanese-dominated areas to save and evacuate injured soldiers, one by one. Even though tired, he spent hours carrying soldiers and taking them to the beach, To lower the soldiers onto the beach, he tied a rope to them, and with his own hands, he lowered them from the cliff. Even when most American soldiers had evacuated, he refused to do the same and remained up there to help injured soldiers who had been abandoned. He was seen praying as he helped the men get down, and according to their words, he always asked, "God help me save more one." In total, Doss saved about 75 men. After the end of the war, Doss earned several medals of honor and lived a quiet life, and lived to be 87 years old.